very often when you look forward to something so much, David, the reality is a bit of a letdown. And we all look forward to this year. We all anticipated, something a bit special. And my goodness me, if anything, it over-delivered.
It did, on every level, from the word go. Monte Carlo was Monte, Sweden, where Mexico, Corsica, different winners every time. And every manufacturer winning. It was brilliant. The championship almost down to the wire. It was great. And the cars. We shouldn't forget the cars totally delivered on what we hoped they would be.
Well, the cars, I think, have introduced rallying to another generation, which is what we've been trying to do for decades. Really since, we talked about it a lot, going back to the Group B, the appeal of Group B. We've rediscovered that. There are cars that my son, who's 8 or 9 years old, looks at and goes, wow, Daddy, I want one of those.
But I remember the first time we talked about these 17 regulations, which was probably in 2014, 15, and Jean Todt said to us, when we were sat around the table, he said, I want children to put these cars on their wall and I want them to dream about these cars. And we did, that's what we did with the 6R4, the RS200, all of those Group B cars. And you do. I have a 9-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl, and both of them love these cars, and it triggers something in the younger fella, and it's brilliant. It's just what we need.
It is. It's just what we need, and with younger drivers coming through as well now that are really appealing to the younger generation, the whole thing, it's got momentum, hasn't it? But let's talk, David. We were going to keep this relatively brief.
Yeah.
It's difficult. I find it difficult to keep anything brief, as you know. But let's go into as you said, a review of the season. First of all, your highlight of the year, David.
Highlight of the year, I think we've covered it already. It had to be the cars and just the delivery of this year's championship. I would almost struggle to pick out one year. You could pick out Elvin in Wales or Lappi in Finland, but for me the highlight has been the year itself.
That's a really good answer. How do I follow that? If I'm talking about one moment that I have to pick, I would say Lake Brennig in Wales. Just for that 20 minutes, that half an hour, where we had Tanak coming through to claim the manufacturers, we had Ogier coming through to claim his 5th world title, one of only
Elvin.
3 drivers, and then Elvin Evans. And let's not forget, I felt a bit sorry for DMAC and all that.
They kind of got
overlooked because there was so much else going on, but the DMAC story was quite an incredible story, the David and Goliath story.
You totally have to give it to them. They picked that event and they worked towards it, and they didn't just beat Michelin there, they demolished them. They totally took them to the cleaners.
But then it all came good for them. The package was right, the driver was right for that event, the car was right, the motivation was there. I think Evans' input into that win, in some ways, hasn't been given enough credit. I think a lot of people say, well, it was the tyres. Anyone could have won it on those tyres. I think Evans would have won it had they all been on the same tyres.
Quite possibly, but people like Ogier and Meek were pretty clear. You've still got to drive the car. Regardless of the tyres. So moving on. Tell me your biggest disappointment of the year.
Oh, dearie me. Without getting into trouble.
Not getting into trouble. You're never out of trouble, Colin.
Oh, jeez, that's very true. Biggest disappointment of the year. A couple of things I'd have to say, and it's very difficult to choose between them. Very, very disappointed to see the way that the whole Citroen crisis was handled, and in particular Meek. We've seen in the past drivers going through difficult spells. I felt Meek was very much made the scapegoat for the problems. And consequently, it's been proven that it wasn't Chris Meek. There were fundamental issues with the setup of that car, in particular with the suspension. We've seen in the past the likes of, I suppose, Michel Nondon at Hyundai putting his arm around Thierry Neuville when Neuville was having a difficult period and really bringing the best out of him, giving him the time, encouraging him, never losing faith in him. I thought the way that Chris Meek was dealt with was one of my biggest disappointments. But perhaps the bigger disappointment, I'm a big Hayden Paddon fan. And, Paddon's form this year for me was an enormous disappointment, and it was down to a number of things. I think primarily he never got to grips with a car. A different sort of driving style required, different technique required, but he had so many things to deal with this year. Personal matters, obviously Monte Carlo was the worst possible start. Between those two, if I had to be choosing one, I would probably say it was Paddon's lack of form.
Good, because I'm going to go with Citroen, because for me, that was the biggest disappointment. We expected so much from them. Volkswagen going out, Citroen coming back, we thought they were going to be the team that were right there, right at the front. And, okay, the car was a disappointment, but also, I feel disappointed that there's perhaps a lack of commitment from within the group. That, you know, they had an opportunity to buy Andreas Mikkelsen. They missed out on that. 12 months ago they could have bought Ogier. This year they could have bought Ogier. What does this say, you know, about Citroen's intent in the championship?
Well, that leads on nicely to the next question for me, which is the biggest mistake of the year.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest mistake of the year was Monsieur Maton and his single-minded, if you like, determination to get Ogier. And he completely ignored Andreas Mikkelsen. Mikkelsen, for me, as it turns out, it looks as if they couldn't afford Ogier. I'm sure they could have afforded Mikkelsen. For me, Citroen missing out on the opportunity to have Mikkelsen as part of the team next year is an enormous mistake.
Yeah.
Because I think they'll struggle. I think that team is weak. And, you know, you've got a mercurial talent in Chris Meek who can win any rally.
Yeah.
And he can crash on any rally.
Yeah.
So you need a strong wingman for Meek, and it isn't there. It's not there next year. Craig Breen is still in development.
Yeah.
And the third driver is going to be a combination of who knows who. I mean, Sheikh Khaled, perhaps even Lefebvre, perhaps Sebastian Loeb, we don't know.
Yeah.
A strong team for sure would have been Meek, Mikkelsen, Breen. That's a strong team. I think the biggest mistake was single-minded pursuit of Ogier, letting Mikkelsen head off to the opposition.
I was thinking about this after we discussed it, and
Don't think.
No,
what I find is it's best not to think.
I was going to go with a more event-based mistake and talk about Elvin in Argentina. But having talked to Elvin more recently about that, you know, he said it wasn't all about that bridge. He didn't lose the rally because he just, you know, the car slid too much. It was a progressive thing that the tyre had stopped working or wasn't gripping as much at the rear earlier in the stage. So, yeah, perhaps that's a bit harsh. So I'm going to go with you on that one.
Yeah. Do we agree?
We agree.
Wow.
We agree. What was your rally of the year?
Well, I have to say my rally of the year, my favourite rally. Consequently, it's taken a fair old kicking, and you can read about that on Autosport and Motorsport News. Rally Australia, I came away for various reasons. I loved Rally Australia this year. I really did. I thought the format was great. It was compact. The stages were great. What I loved, though, about Rally Australia is the fact that they embraced the World Rally Championship in Coffs Harbour. From the marshals to the organisers to the local businesses to the fans in the stages, it is a rally fest. It's how it should be.
Yep.
Yes, there might not be 80,000 plus spectators. It's not far off that, 64, 65,000. But for me, you know, I listen, I had the most incredible digs. I watched Wales. I watched one of those huge ones called humpbacks.
Oh, not versus New Zealand. Wales.
No, this
sorry.
Australia. I watched a humpback whale breaching from the deck of my accommodation. I watched dolphins in the ocean a few hundred metres away. I saw this enormous, I called it iguana.
But this is
more... hang on, but it's just the whole thing for me. You said what my favourite rally
That wasn't an iguana, that was a crocodile.
Well, it may have been. It was a blooming dinosaur. I don't know
But-
what it was, but
but
it was
that's
huge.
not-
Everything added to
But
me.
that's not about the rally, is it? That's about the
I
whole
don't know,
package.
but it's about the package.
Yeah, but in terms of what was the best rally for me, Finland.
When you say the best rally, the best
Yeah, but-
experience, surely.
Yeah, but
what are you talking about?
I'm talking about
the best
the actual sporting contest of the rally.
Well, you didn't say that.
I'm sorry. What was the best sporting contest of the year? Finland.
Give me time to think about that.
For me, Finland. Always, it's just an amazing speed fest. And once again, to have the next generation coming with Lappi, you know, and that Saturday, I've talked to Jari Matti about this, through the morning and into the afternoon, he drove superbly. Anybody but Elvin. Most improved driver. Nonsense. There is nobody that can come close to Elvin.
What?
Don't knock your coffee over. We have coffee
Oh
holders.
no, have you seen this beautiful
Put it
white
down
leather?
there.
It
Put it
really
down
is.
there.
Yeah, there are
Put it down
cup
there.
holders. By the way, how many cup holders? Have you counted them?
It's 6.
At least 6 cup
At least.
holders in this fabulous Range Rover.
So you agree then
Autobiography.
it's Elvin's
No, I
most
don't
improved
agree with
driver,
that. I
really?
don't agree with that.
That's
I don't
disappointing.
agree with that. And Evans will tell you himself it was an up and down season. He made progress, and he made very, very good progress. Very, very, very good progress, and I'm not knocking it. But I think really, you've got to look at Latvala, and you've got to say that the doubters were there with Latvala, and rightly so, because
In
he
fairness,
never
he was
delivered.
a doubter himself.
He was a doubter himself. He
Yeah.
never delivered, ever, in his career. And for him, all of a sudden,
I
no,
think
he
that's a
didn't.
bit harsh.
No, it's not. It is not.
He delivered at Ford early.
He
in his career.
never delivered what they needed him to deliver. He gave them wins, but he
He
never
got to a
gave-
level, but he couldn't then go to the next level.
He couldn't,
and then
he couldn't keep that level. He kept dropping back
Okay.
down, dropping back down.
Okay.
So-
but he was on a hiding to nothing at VW. This was a make or break for him to get when he went to Toyota.
So
and
for
it's
me,
made
it's
him.
improvement. It's an
Yeah.
improvement, and it's a vast improvement, and that's why I don't dispute that Evans improved greatly, but I think Latval is the one for me as most improved driver.
Well, we'll have to beg to differ there.
Yeah, but you are half Welsh, so.
Not half Welsh.
You're half Welsh.
He's got a
I've
good
got
name,
no finish in me.
No.
I'm whatsoever.
I'm sure.
Notes, what's the next one?
The next one is driver of the season. So essentially the performance of the season.
Lappi, Finland.
Yeah. That's one of them.
Is that drive? Performance as an individual drive?
Yeah, we may have kind of covered that before. But anyway, performance of the season for me is Ogier in Monte Carlo.
Oh!
He came to that car with very little knowledge, experience, testing, everything. And to get into it, okay, he went off early. He spent half a minute, something in the snowbank. But to come
28 seconds he lost.
And to drive that event, which was a really difficult Monte, wasn't it, this year? We had loads of snow and ice on the first day, dry tarmac on the second. So he had to get used to the car and all of the settings and the setup in such a wide variety of conditions. And he was there, and he was never far away. And when the opportunity came, he was in.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It really set up the rest of the year for him, didn't it?
Oh, totally.
In terms of his
Perfect
approach,
foundation.
in terms of his intelligence, in terms of his strategy.
Put everybody on the back foot, because that was Neville's event.
Yeah.
He went to Sweden chasing the win he should have had in Monte, and he dropped it again.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
Definitely.
Listen,
right.
I would put Ogier at the top of just about any list, because I think he's a genius. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. But Ogier's having, strangely, a kind of Loeb year. And remember when Loeb for 5 or 6 years, people found it very difficult to warm to him. But then when he got involved in that inter-team rivalry with Ogier, people started thinking, actually, Loeb, you're not such a bad lad. And they started warming to him. I think Ogier has had a similar year, and that people all of a sudden have started to appreciate what he truly is capable of.
Yeah.
In some ways they give, maybe rightly so, Volkswagen extra credit for the achievements of the last 4 years.
Yeah, but we've seen, or the public has probably seen, more humility from Ogier. But I would always beg to differ with that, because there's two sides to Sebastian Ogier. There's the side when he's on event and he's ultra competitive, and he has no time for anything other than winning rallies, and that's absolutely fine. That's a man at work.
I totally get that.
But we're fortunate enough to see every now and then Sebastian Ogier off event. He's a totally different character.
Highly likeable character.
Yeah, totally. For me, he's misunderstood.
The politest man. The politest man. He'll go and say hello to everyone, shake everyone's hand.
Yeah.
Really a lovely guy.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I still think Lappi's performance in Finland stands out for me as perhaps the driver of the year, because what he's shown us since is that
I'm not sure because Lappi was very, very good, but for me that was the event of the year, Finland. But he was a Finn in Finland who looked in when the other Finn had gone.
Was a Frenchman in France.
I think
in Monte Carlo.
Exactly. Moving on to next year.
Yeah.
Last question.
Is this the last question?
It's the last. We can go on forever. We've gone on a bit. We might get a
10
parking
minutes.
ticket out here. We've been here for this long now. Next year, who's going to be champion? You look at someone like Mikkelsen.
Yeah.
Mikkelsen seems to me to have more rally craft, that he can bring the car home second, third, fourth. But then equally, in every team, Meek, if he can put those performances together, and if he can still learn to finish second, third, he can be there, right there. But the person you come back to is Ogier. But the one that I would like to throw in is Elvin, because I don't know that anybody has had the same sort of consistency that Elvin's had through this year, and it's all about consistency.
Are we talking about different seasons? He had a very difficult
consistency
patch.
of performance. He's always been there. The stage down. One of the best things.
I'm not doubting Evans, by the way. Listen, don't get me wrong. I am absolutely not doubting him.
But his ability to keep the car in the middle of the road, keep the times coming, keep the points coming, it's going to build a momentum through the year.
And what I would say to back you up on that is his attitude.
Yeah.
Is bang on. He's bang on. He's got a work ethic and an attitude for me, which will actually, I think you're right, stand him in good stead this year and potentially give him the opportunity. Listen, it's the most open year. This year was incredibly open. 2018.
It's going to be even more open.
It's difficult to pick even which manufacturer
will
win the driver's title.
We haven't even mentioned Toyota.
You can't write Toyota off. The question was next year. For me, what is going to be very interesting, you and I were very fortunate. We had a very, very nice lunch, didn't we, with Jost Capital at the start of the year. And I'm sure Jost won't mind us saying that he told us that Latvala's biggest problem had always been teammates. Always been teammates from his time at M Sport and his time with Volkswagen, he always struggled to deal with strong teammates.
Yeah.
Now we've seen this year, without any strong teammates, he has been magnificent. How is he going to cope with Tanak being there? How is he going to cope?
Again, it will be make or break for Jari-Matti next year. It really will. Tanak will be very strong. But equally, Jari-Matti's talked about the difficulty of spending a long time in one team and then moving to another.
And Tanak now has to adapt to that.
Absolutely.
I think the big question about Toyota chased a bit of speed mid-season and they sacrificed reliability. So if they can find that reliability with the speed that we saw in Australia,
they've got a quick car.
They've got a quick car. They will be there or thereabouts. Yeah. I genuinely think, because I think, again, we will have the wins spread around the teams and around the drivers. So I think it'll be the most consistent driver, which then comes back to what you're saying about potentially Elvin Evans. But I think, again, you can't look beyond Ogier.
No, he's so consistent.
With Evans as the wingman, it is a really, really strong pairing, a strong partnership. Yeah. So my money is very much on Ogier and M Sport to retain manufacturers.
I'm with you.
Thank you very much for joining myself, David Evans from Autosport.
Merry Christmas.
At our Christmas table. You can say Merry Christmas. I'm going to speak to them before Christmas.
So
but
Merry
if you
Christmas
want to say
from
Merry
me.
Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and a Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you very much for joining us at our slightly improvised kitchen table.